and let me once again officially welcome everybody to today's Conservation Finance Forum webinar, Big Ideas, Fine Detail, the Long Trek to Lasting Change. This webinar is hosted by the Conservation Finance Forum and assisted by the Ash Center's Government Innovators Network. The moderator for today's webinar is Jim Levitt, who is the Director of Program on Conservation and Innovation at FARST.
Good morning to all of you. I am once again sitting at the Kennedy School of Government in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We have a fairly nice day outside for a change. It is not raining in Boston. We're all celebrating. The leaves are green. People are smiling. The Red Sox won last night and are only a game and a half out of first place. We have as our guests today two individuals who I have known for more than a decade. They will be assisted by a third friend of mine who I've known for 15 years. These are Laura Johnson and Banks Poor of the Massachusetts Audubon Society and Ned Sullivan from Scenic, Hudson. Usually when I talk to people on this program, I'm talking to people that I've met a couple of times. Each one of these people I have worked with in depth on complex projects, and I can tell you firsthand that they are among the very best conservation executives in the United States. I am proud to know them. I am excited to have them on this program. But before we launch into two of their discussions, first with Ned Sullivan for about 15 minutes, then with Laura, assisted by Banks, for about 15 minutes, followed by your questions. I want to take just a second to note and thank Jim Cooney, who has been my partner in this enterprise for, I believe, 12 sessions before. Jim is on his way to graduate school at the University of Florida in Gainesville to get a master's in
fiction writing.
He is a very talented writer, and we all wish him the best. The series will continue without Jim, but we will sorely miss him. He's a tremendous guy, and Jim, thank you very much for all your help to date. All right, with that, let me begin by introducing my friend Ned Sullivan. As you can read from his bio, Ned is the president of Scenic Hudson. He has been president for about a dozen years. Ned comes to that job with very deep experience. He was first, after having graduated from the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies and the Yale School of Management, he first went to the Bank of Boston, where he was a banker. He really worked in the investment banking side of the field and did some very important and large deals in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. He then went to the state of New York, where he was the Deputy Commissioner of Environmental Protection. From there, the state of Maine, where he was the Commissioner of Environmental Protection under Governor Angus King. And then from there to where he is today on the Hudson River, working at the head of Scenic Hudson. Ned, before you launch in, let me ask you the one question that I like to ask all of the guests here, which is, what inspired you to get into this work in the first place? And then how has that led you to what you're going to talk to us about today, which is, among other things, landscape scale conservation?
All right. Well, thanks so much, Jim. Good luck to you, and thanks for your technical assistance. And Jim Levitt, thanks for the opportunity to be part of this and for your nice introduction. Love of the outdoors, love of hiking and climbing and skiing and biking, a passion for the beauty of the world around me is certainly what got me involved in this field. And as you know, Jim, we were trained at Yale School of Management to move from one sector to another, and it's been a great opportunity, a great career to do that, and there's so many different ways to be involved with protecting the environment. So I'm a fan of the multi-sector approach, which you've been a great exemplar of as well.
So Ned, you have in front of us now, and you can take over the steering wheel, your first slide, which is about saving the land that matters most. I think it's important to say from the outset that Ned is doing on the ground what many people are talking about now, which is collaborating not just with one or two nonprofit organizations and governmental agencies, but 16 to systematically protect land stretching throughout the Hudson River Basin, which is the home to his organization and one of the places that the environmental movement emerged in the 1960s. So Ned, can you take us in about 15 minutes through your slides and explain some of the tricks to making these collaborations successful?
Yes, thank you. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. And in the first slide here, you see a view looking down to Manhattan skyline. So we are working in New York's backyard. Our work runs from Manhattan up to the Capital District of New York in Albany. That's about 150 miles. And then we go a little farther north to the foothills of the Adirondacks because of our work as advocates for the cleanup of the PCBs that General Electric discharged into the Hudson, a project that is, I'm proud to say, about to get underway in its final phase in June. The Hudson Valley celebrated the 400th anniversary of Henry Hudson's sail up the river in 2009. And as we thought about that milestone, we decided that it was important for us to launch an initiative that would focus our resources and those of other conservation organizations and state agencies, federal partners, on protecting the critical lands along the river's edge. We have, during our 48-year history, varied our focus, but at this time and for the next decade or so, we are going to be focused like a laser in creating a greenway on both sides of the river from Manhattan all the way up to the head of the estuary in Albany and Troy. I'm just going to give a very quick elaboration of what Jim said about the Hudson Valley being the launching pad for the modern environmental movement. You're looking here at a photograph of Storm King Mountain, and the inset in the upper right-hand corner is a proposal that Con Edison had back in the mid-60s to build a power plant on that mountain. They would have blasted the face off of it and created a pump storage facility. Our founders stopped that project and won legal standing in court for the first time for a group of environmentalists. That decision by the courts to grant them legal standing, it's called the Scenic Hudson decision, is considered the cornerstone of the National Environmental Policy Act and giving voice to citizens throughout the country to speak out and be heard on environmental decisions by government. The next image is the area about 112 miles where our land conservation work is focused. It starts in the Hudson Highlands and goes all the way to Albany. And the shaded areas, kind of a purple reddish color, on either side of the river represent project areas where we are focusing our land conservation work in this collaborative initiative. This is a branded initiative called Saving the Land That Matters Most. And the key elements that have enabled us to make good progress in the first few years include a very strong leadership by our staff at the staff level. Steve Rosenberg is the executive director of our land trust. Beth McKee is our director of land preservation, and Fred Rich is our board chair, a member of the Land Trust Alliance board now. And with staff leadership and board support, we've had a real success in a strategic approach, supported by in-house GIS teams, land managers, and conservation scientists. Our approach is strategic, and I'll come back to the details of that. We consulted with Jim Levitt in structuring the approach, as well as the firm of Conservation Impact. And then the accreditation process through LTA was a very informative and important one in the early phases of our work. Another element for our successes to date are strong partnership. We have 17 partners working with us. Actually, excuse me, it's 16 partners that include local or sub-regional conservancies like the Columbia Land Conservancy, the Dutchess Land Conservancy, the Hudson Highlands Land Trust, as well as national groups such as the Nature Conservancy and the Trust for Public Lands, as well as the Open Space Institute, which is our partner regionally, but also doing work throughout the Northeast. And those partnerships have been absolutely key. And then finally, we have been blessed to have available capital to fuel our projects, both from an endowment, from transfer of lands to New York State and the National Park Service. We've had a strong partnership with a foundation that is based in this area, is based in New York City, but very focused on the Hudson Valley. And then we've participated in the Pew Charitable Trust's Northeast Land Consortium project, which has provided us matching grants, 20% matching grants for a lot of our projects. So once again, just refocusing on this map, the reddish areas are sub-regional priority areas, and the green areas on the right, upper quadrants that I'm pointing out with my pointer now, those are areas where we're currently focusing our farmland conservation work, farm preservation work. So I'm going to quickly move through some slides here that illustrate how we target our priorities. This is the Hudson Highlands area, and just the first map just shows geographic location. The next map is areas that are already protected with the black or gray hatched striped areas protected by Scenic Hudson, the green hatched areas by New York State or other partner organizations. So that's our baseline. We next add in red brackets the scenic areas of statewide significance. This is a regulatory designation that identifies those areas with the most important scenic resources that we and New York State's Coastal Zone Management Program feel should be protected. Next, you see some yellow points on the map. Those are public viewpoints. And next, you see public viewsheds, the places that you see from those public viewpoints. Now we add areas of high biological value. And then finally, by merging all these maps, we get these orange shaded areas, and those are our priorities for protection. So this gives us a roadmap of the lands that we want to protect, and we actually we know every parcel and its size and ownership that is in private hands and that doesn't have an easement or hasn't been acquired by a conservation organization. So that is our roadmap, and there'll be a map a little later that shows you this down to the parcel level. Here's an example, a case study that resulted from the strategic analysis. It's called Popolopen Ridge. It's in the Hudson Highlands on the west side of the Hudson River. It's this area that is bracketed or outlined in red. What you see is Bear Mountain State Park to the south and West Point. All these green areas to the north are part of West Point, owned by the U.S. Military Academy, of course. So this land is a puzzle piece that was missing from conserved lands in the Hudson. It was threatened with development, and we were able to acquire it. Here is a photo of that parcel. Bear Mountain is to the south, or to the left. West Point is to the north. You can see it. It's an incredibly scenic area. Just below it, closer to the river, is Fort Montgomery, a historic site where important battles of the Revolutionary War were fought. This is a great kayaking stream I love to go up here called Popolopen Creek. We've protected this land through a very creative financing scenario from a foundation that provided us a zero-interest loan. We had private donations and backing from the Pew Charitable Trust in that 20% matching program. So we protected critical viewpoints, view sheds here, scenic areas of statewide significance with great biological values, and there are trails that will eventually be tied in here that will link up to the Appalachian Trails and others. This is what was proposed for that site, the development that would have occurred if we hadn't stopped it. This is another property that we protected that is farther north. This is the view that Franklin Roosevelt looked out his bedroom window and saw from his boyhood through his presidency. In the lower right-hand inset, you see Franklin and Eleanor sitting on their back lawn with this land in the background. And this had a proposal by a developer for 288 units of housing that we stopped. This is another parcel of land visible from that same spot and a development scenario that it could have occurred if we hadn't recently protected that with a conservation easement. This is a view of Olana up in Columbia County, further north, and an area that is a state historic site on the National Register. And what you see is land all around it that was painted by this Hudson River School painter, a pioneer of the Hudson River School. And the land all around it is part of this initiative, land that we are protecting because of its scenic values, so that today's Hudson River School painters can go up to Olana and paint it. But it's also a vibrant working landscape. This is a vineyard here that we have under easement. We have protected orchards. And then here you see in dark green, you see Olana here in the upper right-hand corner, and then all these dark green parcels are protected by Scenic Hudson. And the light green areas are protected by Trust for Public Land, the Columbia Land Conservancy, and Audubon, New York, this land right here. And this is a freshwater tidal swamp forest. Very important from an ecological perspective. It's an important flyway for migrating waterfowl. And all these numbered parcels here, this is an example of how we bring it down to the parcel level and are seeking to protect those additional lands.
Ned, this is Jim. I want to give you about a 4-minute warning.
That's perfect, Jim. Thank you. So this initiative also encompasses protecting working farmland as well as these scenic and ecological areas along the Hudson River. And we're focusing on towns that have waterfront and working. We've protected to date 8,000 acres, 50 farms in 4 counties. We're currently focused on 2 counties, and we've identified about 25,000 acres of land that meet the highest standards for soil quality and for the viability of an agricultural economy in their sub-region. This illustrates the importance of these farms, not only in providing healthy, fresh produce for local farm markets, restaurants, and grocery stores, but also for New York City. This is Union Square Market, and each of these dots is a vendor selling produce in one of the 50 or more green markets on New York City streets where people in the 5 boroughs can buy fresh produce, where we can overcome what's known as food deserts in some of the poor urban neighborhoods. I'm now going to just quickly move through several other slides that illustrate what we're doing to shape waterfront development in some of the southern areas of our geographic region, in urban areas like Yonkers. This is a proposal on the left that was some developers' plan that was moving through the approval process. We stopped it and instead created a public waterfront that has a sculpture garden, green space, beautiful restaurant, and that is open to the public now, and a great place. Just on the other side of the railroad tracks from that same development is a parking lot under which flows the Sawmill River. And 1 year from now, that parking lot is going to look like the image on the right here. The Sawmill River will be opened up, and there'll be a 3-acre public park in downtown Yonkers right next to the train station and local library. So that's part of a waterfront and in-city development that we've helped to shape and raise the money for. This is Irvington, further up the river. A former industrial lumber yard has been turned into a fantastic public park. In Tarrytown, this asphalt plant, what was once an asphalt plant, is now a mixed-use commercial development here, wrapped with green space. This will be the Scenic Hudson Riverwalk Park in Tarrytown, a collaboration of the developer, the village of Tarrytown, Westchester County, and New York State. This is Beacon, where a former industrial rail yard is now a wonderful public park. That park is now being expanded to include this red barn, which is going to be an environmental and arts education center managed by one of our civic partners here, the Mill Street Loft. And this green space here is going to be reopened July 9th, when the entire park and kayak center and arts education activities will move forward. This is Walkway Over the Hudson, a wonderful initiative of a local not-for-profit that was supported by the Dyson Foundation, one of our most important foundation partners in the region. We participated in the transformation of this abandoned railroad bridge into this public park that saw 50,000 people on its first day of opening as part of the quadricentennial celebration. And Scenic Hudson contributed $1 million to the realization of this project, and we're now working to link this with other urban and regional park amenities in a walkway loop trail. So just to summarize, we've made tremendous progress through a strategic approach, collaboration with wonderful land trusts, with municipal partners. We've used a highly strategic framework for selection of both lands to conserve and where we will invest our park improvement dollars. Our coalition has also served as a working group on public policy issues, so helping gain support for the conservation easement bill that we're working with Land Trust Alliance to get approved in Congress, working on the America's Great Outdoors initiative, laying the groundwork for reauthorization of the Farm Bill next year. The volatility of capital has been a factor, but we've been able to work through that with our own funds and by leveraging the monies of the Pew Charitable Trust and other foundation partners. We've gotten great press for this. The public knows about it. There's real enthusiasm, and we're excited to continue the collaboration that has led to success so far.
Ned, thank you very much. You really addressed the theme of the day perfectly. The theme, of course, is big ideas and fine details. This is a very aggressive program across a very important piece of landscape in American history and in the current life of America. It has taken strategic planning, an intricate knowledge of biology, financial agility, and a passion for marketing, communication, and storytelling to get this done. There was a lot of fine detail to address in putting this plan together and then in implementing it. And I want to congratulate you on the progress you've made, and we're excited to see the direction that you're going to take this.
Thank you.
Now, our next guest or guests is Laura Johnson, and she's with Banks Poor, who is kibitzing, as he said it, next to her. Laura is the president of the Massachusetts Audubon Society. I had the great honor of serving on her board for 12 years, and she, like Ned, is a very planful, strategic, careful manager with very ambitious goals, which she has achieved. Notably, right in the middle of the last 5 years, which we've all been through, she led Mass Audubon in raising $55 million in a capital campaign, which looked like a almost impossible task, and Laura was barely ruffled in moving through it. What I've asked Laura to talk about today is an aspect of conservation that often gets overlooked, but certainly will be critical as we go forward over the next several decades if, as I believe most of us on this call would agree, global warming proceeds as predicted. That is the responsibility of all of us, including conservation organizations, to reduce our carbon footprint and act as responsible citizens on this earth. Laura and Banks and other people on her staff have designed one of the best, most aggressive energy conservation, carbon footprint reduction programs that I know of, and she's going to spend about 15 minutes talking to us about that. Once Laura is done, we'll take questions from you emailed into the site or typed into the site, and I will ask the questions. Laura, let me begin by asking you the same question that I asked Ned, which is, what brought you to this line of work?
Well, I think the answer is a little bit like Ned. You know, the good fortune of having a childhood that included being outdoors a lot, a transformative experience at camp when I was in high school, and my parents got me out of Cambridge, Massachusetts, and its bad influence. And then just the pleasure of working at two great organizations, the Nature Conservancy and Mass Audubon, with inspirational colleagues and urgent missions.
So given that, which I can attest is all entirely accurate, can you walk us through your presentation on energy and water conservation and green building initiatives at Mass Audubon? And Laura, let me give you about 15 minutes to do that, and then we can take some questions. If the questions spill over past the noon hour on the East Coast, we can go a little longer. So take it away.
Great. Well, thank you, Jim, also for the opportunity. And it is a real contrast, I think, between what I'm going to talk about and Ned's beautiful slides and incredible projects. Because I think to some extent the question of engaging on climate is one that the traditional land conservation organizations are sort of having a hard time figuring out how to engage with. And I think it's absolutely essential that we do. With the question here, if not now, when? I mean, just within the last year, these sorts of issues going on. Just in setting some context, Mass Audubon did a strategic plan about almost 2 years ago now, and we have 4 major goals: connecting people and nature, which is a lot of what we do through our programs and sanctuaries, continuing to protect and steward Massachusetts habitats, and then I think our third big strategic goal is the one I'm going to talk about, which is responding to climate change. And we think about it, as most other groups do, in terms of two big areas: adapting to changes in the land that are going to happen because we've already put so much carbon in the air. There are going to be changes. So what does that mean about the land we protect and the way we manage it? And then the second, which is mitigation, which is how do we slow how much carbon we're dumping out. So what I'm going to talk about for the next few minutes is entirely focused on the mitigation part of our goal of responding to climate change. And it's actually just one piece of our approach with regard to mitigation. But what we sort of realized is that if we're going to engage in this area, we need to walk the talk the walk. We need to lead by example and make sure that our own house is in order. So that was one of our first major goals within our responding to climate change was, as you can see here, lead by example, reduce Mass Audubon's energy consumption and carbon footprint, and use these activities as demonstration models for our members and the general public. For those who don't know Mass Audubon, we've protected 34,000 acres of land in a system of sanctuaries in Massachusetts, about 21 nature centers, which are sort of a size and scale that are very similar to residential or small commercial. So we really believe that if we are making our centers models of energy efficiency and all the things I'm going to talk about, that we can actually show people very concretely that these changes are possible. So we set very, very definite goals here that we want to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by year 2014 from a base year of 2003. We've reduced 44% by the end of FY 2010, and so we're still getting the rest of the way. So I'm going to quickly go through what we've worked on, and I guess one of the other points is that you can't do just one thing. All of this is interlocking, and we sort of are seeking to make progress on all of these things. My colleague, Banks Poor, who Jim mentioned, is also here. He's really been the leader of most of this stuff. Fortunately, if you have any specific questions, I'm going to ask him to answer them because he's been really figuring out how we're going to pay for it and, the best way of getting it done. So this is the long list of things we've been working on: energy conservation, water conservation, green power purchasing, renewable energy generation, our fleet of vehicles, green buildings, education, and some other things we've been working on. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, and a lot of them aren't very glamorous. That's one of the things you quickly realize in trying to do this is that, and it's the theme of Jim's conference here, is it's within the context of big ideas and big contexts that you have to do really small things, like bulb replacement and refrigerator replacement and programmable thermostats and all the things that you see on this list. So we've been doing this list of things at all of our facilities throughout the state. We've also been focused on water conservation. Again, talk about unglamorous things: replacing toilets, installing waterless urinals, and again, using these to lead by example for people who are in our sanctuaries and using our systems. Perhaps one of the biggest decisions we made was to buy green power. Here in Massachusetts, you have an opportunity to buy green power. It's optional and it's a little more expensive, but we made the decision to purchase 100% green electricity starting in January of 2009. So that has actually allowed us to, and you'll see in a minute when I show you a graph, really reduce our energy consumption, or to reduce our carbon emissions, not our energy consumption, throughout our sanctuary system. We've also been focused on generating power ourselves, renewable energy, and we've made a big investment in photovoltaics throughout our sanctuary system. I'll show you a few pictures of just a few of the places where we've been doing PV. We also have three facilities now with solar thermal, including our residential camp, which is just over the border in Rindge, New Hampshire. And we also have been investigating, but have not yet found an appropriate place to put wind, but we are committed to doing that. Just quickly, some of the places where we're doing photovoltaics, and you can see here we have both roof and ground mounted for people on the call who know what that means. And we are just about to open, or just turned the switch on our latest installation, which is actually at a state-owned site in one of the state parks. But you can see there's a bunch, 30 altogether, 256 kilowatt hours installed, producing approximately 30% of our electric usage. And here's what some of them look like. And as you can see, both ground-mounted and not. So we also know that we have a big issue with carbon emission from our vehicle fleet. We have 71 vehicles. Again, the context is we do a lot of programming. We have staff throughout the state. They need to move around, and that's why we have such a big fleet vehicle. It's been one and continues to be one of our biggest challenges to both assess how much emissions we're getting from our vehicles and also how do we replace it. And you'll see here on this slide some of the things we've been doing. At least so far we haven't found a van. We use vans for program participants. We haven't yet found a van solution that we think is both cost effective and reduces our emissions. So that's a big issue. Sixth thing is green buildings. We are still building facilities or improving facilities, and we have a really strong commitment to building green wherever we do that. And actually, especially if we can build a new facility, it gives you a chance from the very beginning to do it right. And it's really hard to retrofit afterwards, and that's what we're also trying to do a lot of. Then, as I said, we're using all of this activity across the state. We're trying to use for educational purposes, to have our 500,000 sanctuary visitors a year, and program participants a year, have an opportunity to see that these things are very, very possible for them as well. So we have interpretive materials at our site, a lot of information on our website. You'll see that we have developed these clean and green trails for visitors to our sanctuaries that relate to water use, energy use. We call these green trails, and have brochures and other things that are possible for people to self-guide and learn by following these green trails. And then one of the things we're also doing is we've got real-time electric. We can show people in a metering system real-time electricity production so that they can see what, for instance, the PV arrays are doing. On the right hand of this slide, you see these panels. I think I got this pointer, maybe not. Anyway, the panels are installed at each of the PV arrays to sort of, again, interpret for people. So overall, this has resulted in this 44% reduction from base year 2003 to this year, as you can see in this graph. And as I said, we're trying to get to 50. Again, in the theme of what's not glamorous about really trying to integrate your efforts to lead by example, these are all other things we're doing: recycling, composting, paperless paychecks, bottle filling station. All of these, again, are just things that we're trying to integrate into the organization at all levels to show that we're committed to reducing our own footprint and to operating Mass Audubon in a more sustainable way. So I'll close just with saying that is the sort of lead by example, the initial one of the objectives within our Respond to Climate Change goal. Other objectives include going on to educate our members about their footprint and assisting them to living lighter on the land, and continuing advocacy. And I haven't covered it all, but we're also working on issues around adaptation, what land to buy, why, and how to steward it in the context of climate change. And I'll, again, in closing, would say that I think the biggest unknown is this objective two. How do we actually take Mass Audubon's 100,000 members and have them start making decisions that are more consistent with living in a resource-constrained world? And this is a major set of activities that we're engaged in now, And I think it would be great to have a lot more dialogue like this around how to do that, how to change people's behavior. It's absolutely essential and really challenging to think about how to do. So I think that's what I'll wrap up with, Jim.
Tremendous, Laura. I think you've given us a very good example of how an executive and an organization both talks the talk by addressing the big ideas that are circulating in society and thinking carefully about climate change, but also walking the walk by getting down to the fine details, changing the light bulbs, making sure that the photovoltaic arrays are working and the meters are going around and around, feeding electricity from time to time back into the grid, so that to demonstrate that these ideas are not just things that show up in books, but that are instituted on the ground. Now, let me, I have a lead question to ask both of you, and then let me invite everyone who's still in the audience, there are 45 of you out there listening right now, to send your questions in on the software that you've got available to you here, and I will pick a couple of them out and read them to the guests, and we'll get their responses. But let me lead with a question, and I ask this having some experience sitting on the inside of these meetings. To what extent, Ned and Laura, do questions and letters and conversations with both board members and funders, large organization funders and small philanthropic individuals, what impact do those conversations have on the way that you plan and the way that you implement these fairly complicated programs?
Laura, do you want to take the first shot?
Yeah, I'll try. I think in climate change, in response to climate change, it's new territory. So I think we've had to bring the whole organization along in deciding both that it should be a major strategic goal, and within that, what we should actually be doing and how should we be investing. So it's been a big education around the organization to get as deeply involved as we've gotten. And it's taken leadership at all levels, as I mentioned, banks especially, but many others in the organization as well. Funders, it's been even more challenging. But that hasn't meant we've stopped. We've been using some traditional sort of depreciation and other tools of just basic infrastructure management to pay for some of this, where we haven't been able to find a grantor who wants to invest in it.
But nonetheless, you've reduced, looking for money where you could find it, you've reduced your footprint by 44%, which I would be very interested to hear other examples of conservation organizations who have gone so far, so fast. Ned, do you want to respond to the question?
Yeah, I think I will respond on multiple levels. We are fortunate to have a substantial endowment that generates about $5 million a year for our acquisition program, and that is managed by board members and outside advisors who have been wise and helped us weather through the downturn in the market, which really did require us to kind of put on the brakes and slow our acquisition program and do some other things for a while. But fortunately, the endowment has rebounded with the market and is as strong as it was before the downturn. All along, though, we have supplemented those funds with generous contributions from board members and outside donors. And in the most valuable structure possible, we've had board members who've made multi-year pledges that include both operating contributions to the organization and a capital component that we have been able to apply to the most important priority acquisitions of the season. And to leverage that with the Pew Charitable Trust Fund. So that combination, I really give Tom Curran a lot of credit for coming up with a very creative program at Pew, has enabled us to go to our board members and donors and ask them to make these multi-year commitments, and then to demonstrate to them that those contributions with the Pew match and with funds from our endowment have really enabled us to make some of these fabulous saves of historic and conservation important properties, and so that's a structure that's really worked for us.
Great. All right, I have a couple of detailed questions from the audience for both of you, and then we'll go back to the more general. Or I'm going to
Jim, can I just jump in with one? I want to respond to something you said a minute ago about how 44% you challenge another organization to do that. I just wanted to mention that, and it's also in the context of resources or money. We've chosen not to purchase offsets, and I think that is a matter of some debate. We right now feel that the offset sort of market hasn't necessarily shaken out so that you can be sure that what you buy as an offset is truly offsetting carbon. And so I just wanted to mention that I think other organizations might decide that they want to get to lower their emissions by buying offsets, but we have chosen not to do that.
Well, that's a challenge in itself, which is to both come up with some programs that do such offsets, and also simply to share among one another the various ways that conservation organizations are lowering their carbon footprint. And Laura, I have two questions for you that are germane to that. The first is from Wes Ward at the Trustees of Reservation, who asks, Laura, what was the Massachusetts Audubon Society baseline carbon emission level, and how did you determine that level? Are you looking for commercial scale on wind sites, and is that on Massachusetts Audubon Society or elsewhere? That's half of the question, but those are four. So let me let you tackle that, and then I'll follow up with one more.
In terms of the base in 2000, our base year was 2003, and our total pounds of CO2 at that time was 3 million, about 3 million pounds of CO2, and we're down to 1.8. And what was the other?
The question was, on wind power, are you looking for commercial scale sites, and would those possibly be sited on Mass Audubon properties or elsewhere?
We are not looking for commercial scale. We would be interested in wind that supplies primarily our needs on a site. But what we're finding, and I know the trustees are deep into this with one of their sites, that a sort of a mid-sized turbine is not yet, there's not yet one we want to put on one of our sites. So we're waiting for the demand to produce kind of a mid-sized wind turbine that we could use.
And Paul Dosher follows that question up with the request, can the full climate change plan of Massachusetts Audubon be downloaded from your website, or is it somehow available?
Most of this is on our website. Our strategic plan is on our website. Our climate change position statement is on our website that has a lot more detail of this information. The information on our PV, all of that is on our website.
So Ned, a question for you now from Walter Moore, who asks, is there a formal collaboration of the public and private groups working along the Hudson? If so, how did it come together? If not, is one needed or not?
That's a really good question. The alliance among land trusts, I would call it informal. We developed the initial strategy, and then we went out and we consulted with potential partners, other land trusts working along the river. It's important to note that there isn't complete overlap in our geographic focus with any single land trust. Our focus is along the river corridor, and many of the groups, like the Columbia Land Conservancy, work along the river, but then They work in an entire county that runs many miles over the Taconic Parkway and beyond. And so they collaborate with us in the area of overlap. And a lot of our work is on a transaction basis with our partners, but we, on larger scale initiatives like assembling multiple farms for easements in an integrated initiative, that is something that we formalize, scope out with a partner like the Duchess Land Conservancy, and we develop the specific roles that each organization is going to play. In that case, we're bringing capital to the table. Duchess Land Conservancy is raising some of the transaction costs, and we're working together. We work together to raise town money that's contributed to purchasing the easements, and then we work jointly to file applications with the Federal Farmland Protection Program. But we come together more formally on these larger public policy initiatives, and we've established shared objectives for our lobbying in Albany, and to work on a farm bill, and to try to get increased funding for the Land and Water Conservation Fund and conservation easement legislation. So I'd say it becomes a little more formal in initiatives like lobbying on shared interests. But I would say it's a loose but structured coalition.
All right, Ned, I have two more questions for you that are related. First, from Keith Reed. Ned, has Scenic Hudson been able to take advantage of the federal ranch land protection money in your farm preservation efforts? New Jersey Conservation Foundation has received nearly $20 million over the past 5 years for these efforts in New Jersey.
Well, that's a great question. I don't know whether the emphasis was on the ranch land versus the farm part of it, but we have not to date accessed that money, but we have just filed 10 applications for our farmland program, and we're also looking at the Wetland Reserve program. But I don't know about if there's a ranch land protection component that we should be looking at. We have not looked at that, but we are working on the Farm and Ranch Land Protection Program administered by the Natural Resource Conservation Service in New York State.
So one more related question from Rio de la Vista. Are you able to work with any of the owners of your conserved lands to address ongoing land health, both on farmed and wild lands? She notes that while working on that issue through their land trust around the Rio Grande, they're beginning to do that, and she would value any ideas you have on that topic.
Well, that's a great question. Because we have easements, we obviously have an enforcement role to play with our landowners to be sure there's compliance with the provisions of the easement. But we have developed a periodic newsletter that we distribute to all our easement holders that identifies new topics and opportunities for learning and sharing on conserved land management. And we found that to be very useful. We've also developed for some of our prospects, some landowners that we'd like to be buying land from or easements, highly detailed inventories of the resources that they have on their lands to kind of open the door for collaborative management of those private properties. And those have been interesting. If we had greater resources, I'd love to be doing this for all our the owners of the land on where we have easements. So those are just a couple of the things that we're doing. But yeah, we are actively working with many of our landowners to be sure that they're using the best possible stewardship practices.
All right, so I have one closing question for both of you. Ned, you've addressed part of this, but probably have something to add. But Laura, I will begin with you with a question from Michael Fiebig. I hope, Michael, I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. Would you mind sharing some of the challenges that you have encountered and lessons learned that might be applicable to landscape scale collaborative initiatives? That is, what is difficult and how have you overcome those difficulties in working collaboratively with regional partners on regional initiatives? Laura, do you want to take a swing at that?
Yeah, I guess walking away for the moment from our climate change work, Mass Audubon still is actively protecting land across the state of Massachusetts and are part of a lot of partnership efforts. You know, I think what are the challenges? Clarity around roles and expectations, potential for competition around resources, you know, sort of the who gets the credit. But I think in almost every case, those sorts of issues can absolutely be worked out. As long as there's open communication and, you know, a fair degree of trust and confidence in the partnership, you can absolutely work through those issues.
Great. Ned, a final word on that before we close.
Well, we've really been lucky to have outstanding partners in the land trust community, and any not-for-profit runs into the challenges that Laura just mentioned, and we've been really lucky to have people really committed to the end goal. One challenge I would acknowledge for greater discussion another time is the impact that we're having on local communities and their concerns that we're taking lands off the tax roll on a landscape basis. Some of the communities have religious convents and seminaries on them that have taken land off the tax rolls or schools. And so for us to be, you know, thrilled every time we conserve property and then take it off the tax roll causes them some consternation. So we are trying to figure out ways that we can create ecotourism opportunities that will have measurable impacts on local businesses and tax revenues and other things that will kind of really make concrete what we know is true, that we're helping the regional economy, attracting tourism, and keeping high tax burden residential development at bay.
Very good. All right. You called for greater discussion on issues around landscape scale conservation at a later time. I promise that we will honor that request. In fact, we're already planning to bring that up for discussion at our next session this fall on this internet broadcast, and also at a number of sessions at the Land Trust Rally in Milwaukee this October. But with that, I want to thank Laura and Banks, and I want to thank Ned for really crisp, interesting presentations. I want to thank all of you in the audience for joining us today, and I want to thank Jim Cooney for several years of tremendous help on this series. We will talk to you again this fall. Have a great summer.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Laura, on all your great work.
Oh, and to you, Ned. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye-bye. And Banks,
bye.
hello, Banks.
Okay.
And then